Hi, today I'd like to talk to you about the international banking crisis and the protests going on. I'm very much heartened that many people are taking to the streets in The Hague, in Amsterdam and all over the United States of America to try to change our financial systems. Unfortunately, this is not a very easy task, but it is something which I feel should be done. The unfortunate reality is that there are people who have as their main motivation to serve others, to help others, to follow their ideals. And there are people who have as their main motivation to win, to dominate others, to have power. And it will always be true that the second group of people will gravitate towards those positions. So it is very hard to say like, oh, we don't want bankers to be greedy or politicians to be corrupt, because people like that will always be attracted to positions where they can have power, where they can have superiority over others. And in the same way as we have parasites, there are diseases, there are mosquitoes, and there are various things attacking a healthy human body or a healthy animal body. In the same way, societies have also parasites and diseases. And two things can happen. If the body is healthy, it will fight the disease and rid itself of it, or of the parasite, or at least diminish the number of bacteria so the person can survive. If the person is not strong, the disease will grow and fester, and ultimately the body will wither and die. So the main question we should ask ourselves is, how can we limit the amount of harm these parasites do to us, rather than just try to be rid of them? There will always be crime and immorality. The main things to do is to take away their control over our lives. Currently we have inflation, and inflation basically means that if you have money and it is not in a bank, then every year part of its value is going to disappear. So if you don't want your money to disappear, you have to put it in a bank to get some interest or to invest it somewhere. So inflation is one of the main problems why people can't take their money out of the banks and do with it as they would please. The other point is deficit spending. Deficit spending is basically our government saying like, gosh, we want to do some interesting things with other people's money, but we don't have enough other people's money. But there are banks and investors whose money we can take, and then we can do the things which we consider should be done. Ideally, the population would get a lot of nice services and nice things in return for these investments the government makes. In reality, we end up paying loads and loads of taxes. In the Netherlands, more money goes to debt repayment than to education and healthcare combined. So we are actually forced into debt by our governments, and they also force us to pay these debts to the banks through taxes. So taxation is basically another way of paying interest to banks. How to counter this? I think that government debt should be decided by the people, not by politicians who probably have loads of interesting friends who are bankers, who are investment companies. So I'm very much in favor of a balanced budget, zero debt for a nation, and only the people themselves can decide to go into debt to a bank or to another nation or another institution. The other main thing to do is to try to stabilize the stock market, because what banks are doing with all our money, and insurance companies and investment monies, is gambling. And the way it works if you invest is you gamble with somebody else's money. So that if the gamble works out and money is made, you take a percentage, they get a percentage. If money is lost, You take a percentage, they get nothing, well, they get stuck with the debt. So it is not a very fair or even system. So if things go well, they get money, if things go bad, you pay money. They only get to profit, they never get to suffer. The whole system of gambling itself, I don't feel that this is a correct system. You can look at banks in two ways. You can see them as a service industry, and we should treat them as a service industry. So what do we ask them to do? We ask them to provide a loan. Well, there's an administrative cost to that. We pay them an administrative fee for that. We transfer money. Well, okay, there's an administrative cost for that. We pay them an administrative fee for that. So there's no interest on loans, there's no interest on savings. There are just fees for the services they provide. No gambling, no weird speculations, and no money evaporating or suddenly disappearing on us. This, of course, can only be done if we can get inflation under control and be decided by the people again, instead of being forced into it by governments and banks who want to make sure that they have control of their money instead of we. The next thing is, of course, to look at the speculation itself. If we are going to continue speculation, we're going to have gambles. And gambles sometimes pay off, they sometimes don't. And this is why you get all these bubble economies which collapse, housing prices which collapse. This is because the value doesn't reflect the reality anymore. A very important thing to do is to get rid of a lot of these speculative tools, options and futures. They are basically rights to buy and sell something at a fixed price. And these prices, they're inflated or deflated. A right to do something benefits only one person, the person who sells the right. The banks, once again, seek to profit from making us gamble. And, well, if the gamble goes bad, we lose everything. If we win, they take a percentage. And if we lose, they actually also take a percentage. This service is not in the interest of the people and should therefore be gotten rid of. The next object I want to talk about is about creating a stable basis. Because right now the basis of the price of a commodity, like for instance gasoline at your local petrol station, is not based on anything. It's all market speculation. This results in very high petrol prices, which everybody is complaining about. The oil companies have doubled their profits. And why? Why do the oil companies need to double their profits at the expense of everybody who needs to drive or who needs to heat their houses? Speculation. The cost does not reflect the value. There's a certain amount of money which needs to be spent to produce oil. And then there's a profit margin. This profit margin is basically unchecked and therefore open to speculation. So if a person pays $1 for something, they can easily sell it for $10,000, and then the value of that $1 item to make will be $10,000 because of speculation. I propose that we set limits to this, that we look at the average prices of a commodity, and for stocks you look at the value of the material objects within that company, the computers, the machines, the buildings, and basically set a certain percentage as a maximum and as a minimum for the possible trading prices of that commodity or of that stock. This will limit the amount of variation and fluctuation on the stock markets, create a more stable economy, and hopefully a more prosperous people. Thank you for listening. I hope that these ideas will find support and will find their way to our legislative offices so we can create a better world. In love and light, Starhawk Dreamer.